In this video, I'll be going over the radio for the Mosquito. Now, before we start, the mission you're flying, you need to make sure realistic communication is turned on, because if you're practicing how to properly use the radio and you have easy communication turned on, it's not going to work. So in the mission, you can just click Customize up here and do Mission Options and come to Easy Communication and Enforce. And for the right side, unselect it. So that will force easy communication off. Now, there are some, if you're flying somebody else's mission, you can have missions set to where it's just on your preference. In that case, what you do is you go to the main settings menu on DCS and you click Gameplay up top and you make sure you uncheck easy communication. So on those missions where it's based on your preference, it will have a realistic turned on. Personally, I like easy communication, but if you want to learn the Mosquito's radio, you have to have it turned off. So I'm going to turn it off for this mission. Alright, so we're in the Mosquito. So the Mosquito has two radios. It has a small radio right here for the pilot, and then it has the big one in the back for the Navigator. So I'm going to go over the pilot's radio first. So the way the pilot radio works is you click one of these channels you want to talk on, A, B, C, or D, and you make sure this black switch is flipped onto the right side, and then there is this button right here. You just click this and it will open the radio menu. There is another way to talk on it. It's kind of the backup mode. So you put this black switch to the middle and that will be in receive mode, so you will be listening, and then you push it to the left in order to talk, and then let it go back to the middle for receive mode again. But that's kind of backup mode. I would recommend just leaving it on the right for push to talk. Also keep in mind, I don't know if the backup mode even works in DCS because it doesn't open the radio menu. So I would just leave it on the right side and just use the push to talk button. So some other things with this radio, the volume control is right here. And there's also a switch right here you can use to dim the lights for nighttime. Unfortunately, you cannot change the frequencies for this radio in the cockpit. You can just switch through your channels. If you want to set the frequency for each channel, you have to do that in the mission editor, which I will show you now. So in the mission editor, you click on your plane and you click the blue dot, but the three dots button, or I mean the pink button with the radio symbol. And you can go to this one right here, TR1143, and you have channel A, B, C, and D. Alright, so now let's go over the Navigator's radio. So first you click number 2 on your keyboard to go to the Navigator's seat. And then you need to turn around and click this button here to lower the headrest. And so here is the Navigator's radio. Now I know that this looks complicated, but it is one radio. It's not multiple radios. It seems complicated because it's split into two parts. This big part in the back is the transmitter, and this part right here is the receiver. And I know there's a million switches on here, but a lot of these switches you don't really mess with, or you just set one time and leave it alone. So hopefully after this tutorial it won't seem as confusing. Alright, so let's get into this radio. So first you need to actually power everything. So on the right wall of the cockpit, there's this little golden hose thing right here. So under it, there are the two switches, and you flip them down, and that will give power to the receiver and the transmitter. So let's go over the receiver first, which is this one. So first you need to turn it on. You need to put it to standby mode so all the switches will work. So you actually come to the transmitter here, and you put it into standby. Now this switch here is actually the power for both of the boxes. It's just they put it on the transmitter for some reason. So once you put it on standby, then you can start messing with all the switches. I'm going to set the game to afternoon so it's easier to see. Okay, it is the afternoon now. So the way this receiver works is like an old car radio. You have this big knob here for course adjustment, and you have the little one here for fine tuning. And as you move them, it moves this stick across, and you kind of just put it on the frequency you want to listen to. There are volume controls right here. Obviously you want to have that turned up. Okay, now you'll notice that on this thing there are these different bands. It goes black, yellow, black, blue. So these bands are different frequency ranges. So basically, how this works is you select which frequency range you want to be in. Like, let's say I want to be in yellow, and let's say I want to be at 300 kilohertz. So I have yellow selected, and then I would move this guy to 300. So that is how that works. So on this switch here, these ones off to the left that goes 3 to 7, 7 to 18, these are your higher frequencies, and these are the megahertz range. And these guys on the right, 75 to 200, 200 to 500, 600 to 1500, these are the lower frequencies, and these are the kilohertz range. So pretty soon I'm going to find a channel here to tune into, but I need to tell you one more thing. So the Mosquito has two antennas. It has an antenna for these bigger frequencies here for the megahertz, and it has a second one for these smaller ones. So if you're going to listen to one of these bigger ones, then you're good to go. But if you want to listen to one of these smaller frequencies, you have to use the second antenna. And the second antenna is inside the airplane. You have to lower it out. And I know it's kind of weird, but let's say I wanted to listen to 300 kilohertz. So that's a yellow one, which is a lower frequency. So what I got to do is I got to lower the extra antenna out of the airplane. So on the right wall of the airplane here, there's this little thing. So you pull back this black lever, and you hold left click on this crank, and you just crank it forward a couple times. That's good. And then push the black lever forward to lock it. And now the extra antenna is lowered out of the airplane. So now I can listen to one of these lower frequencies. And just to show you that you have to actually do this, let me show you something. So let me turn the volume up. So you can hear that Morse code right now. So now you can hear that Morse code. I'm going to raise this thing up, and you'll notice it's going to go away. So you can see once I pulled it up, the Morse code went away, and when I push it down, you're going to hear it again. Well, you can hear it in a couple seconds when it starts beeping. There you go. So in summary, if you're going to be using these lower frequencies, make sure you got this antenna lowered. Alright, so now finally, let's actually find something to listen to. So the Caucasus map on DCS is a great map for practicing because it has a ton of these little stations everywhere that you can tune into. So let's find one here. Here's one up here, and the way you know the stations is that it's these little black web symbols on the map. You can see them all around here up here. So let's find a frequency to tune into. So here's one here, 335 kilohertz. So first you got to find what range it's in. It is in the yellow range, which I'm already selected. So I go to the yellow dot here and I find, what was it, 335? Yeah. So I find 335, which is around here. So I'm at 300, 310, 320, 330, and then I'll use the fine tuning. And let me turn my volume up for 335. And there you go, you can hear that Morse code now. One thing to note is that this radio has this little green eye here, which is the tuning indicator. So these two lines will come toward the center more, the stronger the signal is. If I move this guy away from the signal, you can see the lines kind of like spread out to the sides, but once I tune it into something, then they move toward the center. So you can use this little green thing to help you tune in. So let's find another frequency here. We have 688 kilohertz. So that is in the black band. So I'm going to switch to the black. I'm going to find the black dot here. And I'm going to move my stick to, what was it, 688? Yeah. So here we got 610, 620, 630, 640, 650, 660, 670, 680. So 688 is over here. And I'm going to watch this green gauge till I get it tuned in right. There you go. See it jump to the middle right there, and I'm going to turn the volume up. And there you go. You can hear the Morse code now. One thing to keep in mind, if you don't hear the Morse code immediately, just wait a couple seconds because some of these radio stations kind of play some Morse code for a little bit and then they stop and then they play some more. Alright, so that was how you listen to frequencies on the receiver. So now let's go over the transmitter back here. So the transmitter is used for actually talking. With the transmitter, I can't tune into one of these little black stations because you can't talk to them. They just emit Morse code. But I can talk to the airports. So I'm going to go to Cobuletti. So you can click on airport and it will show you all the frequencies down here. So for this radio and the Mosquito, you want to look at the first frequency because that is the one that it can tune into. Because all these frequencies are in megahertz. And if you look, the highest the megahertz band goes to is 10. Well, for listening, you can hear up to 18 megahertz, but for the transmitter, if you look at these colors here, the highest you can transmit on is 10. And you can see all these here are 40 megahertz, 100. So the only one we can do this is this first one, 4.35. So how this works is you're going to come down to the bottom left and you're going to choose a band. So the yellow band is 200 to 500 kilohertz. The red band is 3 to 5 megahertz, and mine was 4.35. So I'm going to set this little switch, and I'm going to turn my flashlight on so you can see. I'm going to set the arrow to point to the red band. So whatever band you have selected, that's the color you want to mess with. So I'm going to only mess with the red thing here. And you're going to turn this dial until you get to 4.35. So here's 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. And let me make sure that was right. Yeah, so then 4.35. So then on this side you have these red knobs here. Now, I don't know if you actually have to mess with them because I've never, the manual doesn't talk about it. One guide I've seen online says you need to set these, but I've never set them before and it's always worked for me. But if you want to set them, whenever I go over channels, I'll tell you about this later. But the Mosquito is a work in progress plane, but as far as I know, you don't have to mess with this because I've never messed with these ones on the right side and it's always worked for me. So now, obviously, we need to listen to the airport too, so I'm going to come here to the receiver and I'm going to set this guy to the red band, or the red-blue band, and I'm going to go to 4.123 and then 4.35 megahertz. Then, in order to actually talk, you need to move this switch over to this, transmit receive. Now, since we were just listening on this earlier, it was fine that it was in standby, but if you want to actually talk to them, you have to have it in RT, receive transmit. So then you should be good to go. You come over here to the right wall and there's this button here. You click this to open the radio menu and you click ATC, Cobuletti, and I'll just ask them something random. And if I have all these guys tuned in right, then it should work.
Cobuletti, in field 1-1, request navigation assistance.
So let's see if they respond.
Field 1-1, Cobuletti, ADS, you're heading 238.
So you can see they responded, so I had everything dialed in right. So let's go ahead and talk to another radio tower here. Let's talk to Senaki. So theirs is 4.3. So I'm going to dial my guy here into 4.3. And I'm going to dial this thing into 4.3. And let's go ahead and talk now. So ATC, Senaki, request...
In field 1-1, request navigation assistance. Field 1-1.
There you go. So that was how you listen and talk on a manual frequency. So now I'm going to show you how to set up preset channels for the transmitter. So on the transmitter, you can set up a ton of preset channels. So what you do is you click on your airplane, and you click the pink radio symbol here, in the mission editor, by the way. And you can see the T11454, that is the transmitter. And you can see you have 3 ranges. So you can see this range 3 is the lower range, the kilohertz. And then we have these ranges up here, the megahertz. So I want to have Senaki, which is 4.3, saved as a preset channel. So you can see we got preset N here is set to 4.25. So let's delete that and make it 4.3. So now I have Senaki saved as preset N on, and it is a 4.3 megahertz. So let me show you how to actually do that in the cockpit. So for the receiver, unfortunately, there's no preset. So for the receiver, you just got to dial that into 4.3. So for the transmitter, for the 4.3 megahertz, first you got to switch it to the right channel. It's in the red channel again. And I had it saved as preset N. By the way, you can see all the presets you have here. It puts them on the paper, so you can see N 4.3. So the way this works is you come over here and you switch this guy to the points at your channel N, and then you don't have to worry about the numbers. You can just spin this, and when it stops spinning, that's the right thing. So I'm going to keep spinning it, and oh, it locked in place, so now I know I'm in the right channel. And that's basically how you do it. Now, I'm just going to talk about this thing I talked about earlier. Earlier I said you do not have to mess with this, and you still don't, but I'm just going to show you how it works just in case they change it in the future. So with this guy, with the preset channels, you just do the same thing. You point it to N, and you keep turning it until it just locks in place. Now, once again, all these switches on the right, I'm pretty sure you don't have to mess with it because I've never messed with them and it's always worked. But just in case, that's how it works. So now let's switch this guy to transmit receive, and let's see if we can talk to Senaki. I'm going to click my button, ATC, Senaki, request azimuth.
Call key. In field 1-1. Request navigation assistance. In field 1-1. Call key ADS. You're heading 350.
And that is how the preset channels work. Alright, so now we're going over to how to use the radio as a direction finder. So as a direction finder, first you need to, we're going to be using this thing up here. So what you need to do is you need to find the place you want to fly to. So I want to fly to one of these beacons here, the 335, and you want to dial that in like normal. So set this to standby, and you want to dial into 335. Then what you want to do is you want to get your master switch here to DF for direction finding. And you want to put this guy to balance. You can turn the volume down. So first you want to do balance. So what balance mode is for setting up this guy here to make sure it's aligned right. So you have this meter switch here. So as you spin it, it turns the thing left and right. So you want to make sure it's aligned in the center. And that looks pretty good. And then you want to use this amplitude switch here, and you want the point where the two lines cross to be around in the middle. So now what you do is you use this, put this guy to visual, and now these guys will move based on where you need to fly. So for example, I need to fly off to the right, so these guys are pointing off to the right. And let me take the game out of pause. Let me set up my throttle and stuff. So as you can see, if I turn the plane to the left, the arrows are going to move off to the right even more to show me that I need to turn right. And if I move to the right, the arrows will center toward the middle. So I need to fly right a little bit more. And you can see they're lined up in the middle now. So I'm pretty much going the right direction. Now, one thing to note, there is this sensitivity switch here. If you click it to the right, it will put it into high sensitivity. So once you get pretty close, you might want to slip it to high sensitivity so you can be flying more accurately. But when you're far away, you can put it to low sensitivity. So this method is good to use when you are already flying in the direction of the thing. But the problem with this direction is if you're flying, the problem with this method is if you're flying in the wrong direction, like backwards or to the left a lot or to the right a lot, then this visual thing will not be accurate. So in order to find where the station is, there is also an audio method. So let me show you how to do that now. So the way it works, you set it up the same way. You dial in your channel here, you select your frequency band, and you dial into the station. And you also have this to direction finder, except instead of putting this on a visual, you put this on this little infinity symbol. And you turn your volume up. Also, make sure this is on direction finder. So what this does is this is still in direction finding mode, but instead of doing the visual way, it does the audio method. So you need to turn your volume up, and you're going to have this guy right here, and you're going to click this little latch to unlock it, and you'll notice you can spin this thing around. And as you spin it, the Morse code will change volume. So what you need to do is when the Morse code starts playing, you're going to flip this to the left a little bit and to the right a little bit. And whatever one you can still hear the sound, that is the direction that you need the numbers to move. So, and you want to move it until you don't hear the sound anymore. Now that's kind of confusing, so let me explain. So when I hear the beep start playing, I'm going to flip it to the left and flip it to the right. And let's say on the left I don't hear anything, but when I flip it to the right, I hear the beeps start playing. I hear the beeps get louder. In that case, you are going to move these guys so the numbers go to the right, like this. I know the thing is moving left, but it's moving the numbers right, if that makes sense. And you're going to keep doing that a little bit until you don't hear any more audio. So let me give you an example now. Let me wait for the beeps to start playing. So when the beep started playing, I hold it left, and it got louder when I held it left. So that means I need to move the numbers to the left a little bit, like this. Now I'm going to wait for the beeps again. I still hear them. And when I held it left, it got louder, so I need to do it left a little bit more. Now I'll wait for the beeps again. All right, so I need to go left a little bit more. Wait for the beeps again. All right, so the beeps were pretty quiet now, except this time when I put it to the left, I couldn't hear it. When I put it to the right, I could hear it though. So that means I actually need to make the numbers move right a little bit. So around here is where I don't hear the beeping anymore. So what you want to do is you want to look at the number it is. It's around 5. And that is how many degrees you need to add to your current heading in order to fly toward the thing. So for example, let me see what my current heading is right now. Let me go to my compass. Well, actually, for the demonstration, I'll just click on my plane. So my plane is heading 8 degrees, so 8 plus 5 is 13. So if I head 13 degrees, that is heading toward the station. Now, I actually had this station, so it's a little bit off. But the audio method is meant to give you the general direction. Now, I was already pointing toward it, so that was kind of cheating. So let me demonstrate that again, turn to the left. So I'm not flying in the direction of the thing anymore. So let's try the audio method again. So this time, when the beeps played, and I put it to the left, it cut out, and I put it to the right, it got louder. So I need to move the numbers to the right a little bit. So now let's wait for the beeps again. So when I put it to the right, it got louder, so I need to move the numbers right a little bit more. Let's wait for the beeps again. So this time it got louder when I moved the switch left, so I need to move it a little bit left. And that's around what it is. So it's, let's say, 70 degrees. So let's see what my heading is right now, 298. So you do 298 plus 70 is around 370 degrees. Now, if you get something like this where you go over 360, because the most degrees on a compass is just 360. But when I did my current heading, which is around 300, and I add the 70, I get 370. So when that happens, you just do minus 360. So I get a result of 10 degrees. So let's see, if I fly 10 degrees, will that get me to my thing? And it basically gets me there pretty close. It gets me over here, so it's pretty accurate. So as you can see, the audio method is not exactly super accurate all the time. It just generally gets you around where it is, because the point of the audio method is not to like get you exactly there. It's to get you going in the right direction, and then you're supposed to switch to the visual method. So let me fly to 10 degrees. Let me show you how you're supposed to do this. So I just did the audio method, and now I know I'm supposed to be flying somewhere around 10 degrees. So let me get going 10 degrees here. And now I'm going to switch it to the visual method to be more accurate. So what you do for the visual method is what I showed you earlier. You unlock this guy, and you need to put it back to the number 0. And then we're going to switch this to visual. And now you can see, now we can follow the numbers to get exactly there. Or not the numbers, I mean the lines. So I'm pretty close, so I'm going to switch over to high sensitivity. And you can see it's taking me in the general direction, or it's pretty much taking me there. So it is working. All right, so I've basically gone over the main functions of the radio now, which is how to use the transmitter and receiver with manual frequency and with channels, and I've also showed you the direction finding system. So I'm just going to go over a couple last things to mention. First of all is the two modes I've showed you is normal and DF. DF is for direction finding, normal is for just using it like a radio. There's also earth mode. This has something to do, according to the manual, this has something to do with static electricity in the air, but it didn't really explain it, and I don't know if it actually does anything in DCS, so I wouldn't worry about that. So now you have these MF on fixed and HF on trailing. So like I mentioned before, if you are doing the higher frequencies like these, by default they are on the main antenna, and if you're doing these lower frequencies, they are on the trailing antenna. So if one of the antenna breaks, let's say the main antenna breaks, in that case I'm going to have to use everything on the trailing antenna. So you come over here and you switch this, HF on trailing. Now let's say the opposite happens. Let's say the trailing antenna breaks, then I'm going to have to put everything on the main antenna, so you can set it to that. Now you don't really need to do this because in DCS I don't think it's really modeled where a specific antenna can break or anything like that. But if you want to, that's how that is. Okay, next, the rest of the settings here. The only settings that I went over in the video is off obviously. Standby is for when you're just if you want to listen to the radio or when you want to power the switches on to change some stuff. And transmit receive is for talking on the radio. There's also this setting here, tune. The manual says that you should have it in tune whenever you're messing with these switches. But the thing is that I have always just left it in transmit receive, and it's always worked for me. So I don't know if they'll change that in the future, but as far as I know, you don't need to have it in tune. Also, there's CW and MCW. The manual doesn't really explain what these are. All I know is that whenever I have them in either of these, whenever I click this button, it makes that static sound. But besides that, I don't know what it does. But in DCS, I don't think you need it for anything. So in DCS, the only three settings you need is off, standby, and transmit receive. The next thing to mention, I should have said in the beginning, is there's a light up here that you can turn on for the compass in case it's dark. And there's also one up here for the dome light. For this switch, I went over this for the positions. So this circle is the normal mode. The balance is for whenever you're dialing in this to be zeroed in correctly. The visual is for when you're using direction finding, and the 8 is for audio direction finding. In the manual, for the AVC, it just says it's automatic volume control, but I'm not sure what exactly it means by that, and I don't think I'm not sure if it does anything in DCS. So I pretty much went over all the switches here. There's only a couple I didn't go over. It's these three. This one that says heady, this one that says filter, and this one that says switch speed. I couldn't figure out what those three switches do, and in the manual it doesn't really explain them, so I'm not sure if they are modeled in DCS, but as far as I know, you don't need to mess with them because I've always just left them up because that's how they are by default, and I've never had any problems with the radio. The last thing I want to mention is that the Mosquito is a work in progress in DCS. There are a lot of things that are not finished yet, so they may change how the radio works over time, so just keep that in mind. So thanks for checking out this video. Hopefully the radio makes more sense now. It is a pretty crazy radio for an airplane, and I'll see you later.